Tensions keep rising in the Middle East as Israel prepares for a potential imminent ground invasion of Lebanon. Hundreds of tanks and troops are building up on the border as fears grow over a wider war. It comes after the IDF killed the leader of the Lebanese-based terror group Hezbollah over the weekend. Nate Foy is in Tel Aviv with the latest. Nate.
Kaylee, good afternoon. We have massive breaking news. A senior U.S. official says that an Israeli ground incursion, a limited one, is imminent right now in southern Lebanon. It is expected to be smaller in scale and quicker than the 2006 Second Lebanon War that lasted 34 days and ended in a UN resolution that mandated that Hezbollah operate north of the Litani River, which is something that never actually happened. And that's a big reason why we have this conflict since October 8th, when Hezbollah began firing at Israel. I was able to report from Israel's northern border a few months back, and we watched and we were toured by the IDF. They explained to us that a lot of those kibbutzes right up against the border are targeted because the terrorists come right up to these southern Lebanon villages and they fire anti-tank missiles and RPGs, and that's why 60,000 Israelis have had to evacuate from the north. And today, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says that the goal of this ground incursion that is happening imminently will be to return those residents to their homes. And it's also expected to happen quickly, which is something that Israel has done, really. You think it was just 12 days ago that the pager attack happened, the walkie-talkie attack right after that. And then since then, Israel has really been setting the table for this ground incursion by just systematically taking out Hezbollah's entire leadership structure, and they've done that as they've continued taking fire from several Iranian proxies, 2 missiles in the past 4 days from the Houthi rebels in Yemen, and then Israel responded, hitting Hodeidah, the Yemeni port city that the Houthis actually receive weapons from Iran through that port. So massive breaking news right now in the Middle East. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will receive a security briefing at 7, and then the War Cabinet will meet at 7:30. We'll send it back to you.
Nate, thank you. Meanwhile, the killing of Hezbollah's leader over the weekend was a major win for Israel in its war on the terror group. Hassan Nasrallah had been the leader of Hezbollah for over 30 years. And in that time, he was responsible for killing hundreds of Americans. But despite his brutal past, the media took a lighter tone in describing him. The Associated Press initially characterizing him as, quote, charismatic and shrewd, and a, quote, fiery orator viewed as an extremist in the U.S., who's also, quote, considered a pragmatist compared to the firebrand militants. Imagine that, a pragmatist terrorist. First time I've heard that one. The Washington Post, meanwhile, writing that Nasrallah's speaking style was, quote, always in the folksy yet articulate manner, that he was revered by his followers as a savior, and among his followers seen as a father figure, a moral compass. This guy killed hundreds of Americans. And yet the New York Times made sure to mention he had, quote, a propensity to crack jokes. Emily, the full New York Times quote, and I think we've got to read it because I just can't imagine an editor reading this and saying, let's go forward with publishing. Here it is. He came across as a less dour than most Shiite clerics, partly because of his roly-poly figure, a slight lisp, and a propensity to crack jokes. He never pushed hardline Islamic rule like veils for women in the neighborhoods that Hezbollah controls. Nope, New York Times, but he killed hundreds of Americans.
That's right. The veneer around this filth of an individual only underscores the filth that has been the Washington Post, the New York Times. If anyone needs any other piece of evidence for why they should cancel subscriptions and not pay attention to those medias that are unfortunately disseminated and revered by the left across the globe, it is this. This is an absolute abysmal abomination, and I hope that there is some rectification for this, although I'm not holding my breath for it. I have to point out, Jared Kushner had really an incredible analysis, of course, given his mind, but he put it on X over the weekend, and he talked about the fact that in his countless hours spent studying Hezbollah, no expert ever would predict that Israel could make the strides that it has with this killing of Nasrallah and so much. And he talked about that anyone calling for peace right now has no idea what they're talking about. This is exactly the time for Israel to finish the job, that Iran has for 40 years now been building up their nuclear arsenal as a loaded gun pointed against Israel. The time is now, and what they need to have is unanimous United States support. That is not conditional per the Biden administration, and it is certainly not the celebration of the assassinated terrorist by the left-wing media emanating out of our country. The time is now for unconditional support of Israel.
Yeah, and instead we heard a call for a ceasefire during your hour, Harris. You know, this media, though, and the way they describe it, and you were audibly shocked by some of those statements, it's not a one-off, because in 2019, the Washington Post, we got to remember this, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, they wrote this. He was an austere religious scholar at the helm of the Islamic State. They ultimately changed the headline, calling him an extremist leader. But this is not a one-off.
I remember the day that President Trump announced the killing of him. And who can forget these times when, like Soleimani, when he was taken out? I mean, Israel right now is doing us a militaristic favor. Our troops have been hit by the proxy in Yemen north of 200 times. In the Middle East, our men and women serving have been hit in that region since October 7th, 180 plus times. We have done nothing to deter them. What little this, little that we have done has not been equal to what we needed to do to make it stop. Israel hit Yemen proxies yesterday. They hit the Houthis so hard. Now the question is, can they get back up? They hit Hezbollah so hard, they killed in 2 strikes on our U.S. embassy in Beirut and our Marine barracks more than 300 people. Hezbollah did. We didn't hit them in kind, but Israel just did.
Yeah.
We need to send them a thank you and a fruit basket and shore them up and make sure we have their back, Israel.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. And you mentioned all of the leaders that have been killed. Rebecca, we'll pull that up. Israel has done such an incredible job, and yet to have Biden say it's time for a ceasefire when you have Hezbollah, who's not listening to that UN resolution and has forced 70,000 Israelis to leave northern Israel.
No, there will be no ceasefire now. The momentum is with Israel, and Israel is doing the job that the United States of America should be leading on, which is keeping those sea lanes open in the Red Sea. It's been essentially shut down because of these Houthis, these Iranian terrorists throughout there. So Israel is doing what we should do. They're really executing justice on behalf of Americans from these 1983 Beirut bombings. Justice delayed, but it's still there. But the other thing is, too, you know, Iran is going to be in a dilemma because they need to show these proxies that they are the patron that can protect them. But if they respond to Israel, I really think their nuclear program is over. I think Israel will respond very forcefully and completely eliminate that, because the Iranians have really gotten right on the edge of finally attaining a nuclear weapon.
These are terrorist organizations identified by the United States State Department as terrorist organizations. It's not any more complicated than that. But yet you have Kamala Harris, who wants to be the leader of the free world, going out and telling our American troops that we have no troops in harm's way, that they're a no war zone. Are you kidding me? Those people, as you mentioned, in the Red Sea, in Syria, that are wearing the American flag on their sleeves and on their chest, they are in harm's way. And our leader is over there saying, well, there's nothing wrong. We just need a ceasefire. That's not leadership. That's not a game plan. That's not going to solve it. Thank goodness Benjamin Netanyahu knows how to lead an offense that is actually going to get the job done.
Yep, and our media calls them austere scholars and pragmatists. How about that?
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.